And leadership is not easy. In fact, I would suggest leadership is one of the weaknesses in the veterinary field. And so we have a lot of practices that have wannabe leaders with a team that's looking for leadership. And then, of course, when you change that leader in midstream, you'll start to see turnover because people get bonded to the doctor, clients get bonded to the doctor. So there's going to be a period of storming, norming, reforming, and then ultimately performing.
So the big question is this: how do veterinarians like you, who live demanding lives,
who never seem to have enough time, able to achieve balance and take control of your finances with confidence?
That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers.
We are Florida Veterinary Advisors, and this is the Smarter Vet Podcast. Hey, Smarter Vet. Welcome back to the Smarter Vet Financial Podcast. This is your co-host, Tom Seco. I'm also co-founder of Florida Veterinary Advisors, a national business and personal financial planning firm that's providing a different way of thinking to make financial decisions easy so you can spend time doing other things. If you haven't had a chance to check out all of our other great resources on our website, make sure to check out our master classes, our assessments. Everything can be found over at flvetadvisors.com. And if you're resonating with this episode or our podcast, please make sure to share it with a friend or three so they can also be able to enjoy the same great content. I do have a repeat guest on this show today. I've gotten to know Peter a little bit more throughout the years, and we bump into each other at conferences, and I always enjoy the conversations with him. And I'm really thrilled to have him back here again. And Peter, I'm really glad that we're able to make this work and have another conversation. But thanks for coming back on the show with me.
Well, thank you, Tom. And I'm shocked that you wanted me back, but I appreciate it. I'll try not to decrease the number of people who are listening to your podcast by anything that I might say.
Yeah, let's make it a positive, right? We'll
add
more to it. Well, so let's start things off here. Can you take us back to the early days in practice and what sparked your interest in the business side of veterinary medicine?
Veterinarians tend to be perfectionists, even though you can never be perfect. And I think after I opened my hospital and realized that I knew more about being a doctor than I knew about marketing and law and accounting and human resources, I realized I'd better get some knowledge. And so by going to local practice management educational programs and then starting to attend some of the national conferences, most memorably the WVC in Las Vegas back 30 plus years ago, I realized how little I had learned in veterinary school about the business aspects of veterinary medicine. And so I started to read, and I actually went back to school at night while running my practice full time to get a better education about the business of veterinary medicine. And I found it fun. It was interesting to learn about other businesses and other industries, and whether it was, restaurants, whether it was Harley Davidson, whatever it was, IBM, it was just interesting to learn about other businesses. And it just piqued my interest to recognize that there were others who were in the same boat as me, with so many holes in the freaking bottom of the boat and not enough fingers to put in the holes, that they could benefit from additional resources, additional education, and others who might help them do a better job.
That's great. I love the WVC is definitely a place that every time I go to, it always opens my eyes, and this is the way it's evolved over time. What would you say has been the most eye-opening moment when you've transitioned from clinical work more to being an owner and a leader within the veterinary field?
Probably the most eye-opening fact is how much need there was. I think it is very hard to fail a veterinary hospital, but it's also very hard to create a super successful one. So there's a lot of practices in the middle that could benefit from just a little bit of a nudge and a little bit of a push. And so what I think I realized is how many others had the same feelings that I did about the lack of knowledge and information to be a successful small business person. And they didn't always know where to go to find help, where to go to find knowledge, where to go to find the resources. And so, if you go back 25 or 30 years, veterinary medicine was still, companion animal specifically, was still a business starting to grow and find its identity. As the human animal bond we became more aware of the human animal bond when pets moved from living outside to living on the bed. We developed a much stronger relationship with our clients, and the business of veterinary medicine became a more significant focus. And then we could go back probably to the mid 90s thereabouts when the national aggregators, consolidators started to come into the screen, and we could see those. And so all of a sudden, veterinary medicine went from pretty much a mom and pop industry to big business. And 1994 thereabouts, we started to see television commercials for pharmaceuticals that we were dispensing and or selling. And so we were kind of starting to come out from being hidden to be a much more prominent component in the lives of our clients and our patients.
I do find it interesting when there's been this transition, especially this happened a lot within human medicine and then also happened in the dental space, to where a lot of let's say corporations or investment groups started coming in and buying a lot of practices out there. What are your 2 cents about the overall future of veterinary medicine? I would say more focused on the United States, because I think even like over in Europe right now, majority of practices are corporate owned from what I understand. But what's your overall impression or 2 cents towards like where things are going?
Well, I think what we're seeing now, as we record this in the first quarter or third of 2025, is a very uncertain economic environment, whether you're a small business or a big business. And so I think we have seen a lot of purchasing by the national corporations of some of the cream of the crop, the creme de la creme, for my French, veterinary hospitals.
It's pretty good.
And we have learned the good that they can contribute, exit strategies, integrating more money into the profession, and some of the other challenges that they have identified, which is managing what to me is one of the most complex businesses that are out there in terms of managing a veterinary hospital. So I think where we're starting to see more and more of is an interest in young doctors being entrepreneurs. And I'm wholeheartedly in favor of entrepreneurism, independent hospitals, whether it's a startup or buying an existing practice. But there is a place, and there always will be a place, for large companies to buy some of the bigger hospitals or to buy any other hospital. But I do think that the playing field is starting to level out. I think many of the independent hospitals can be sold to independent buyers with a little bit of financial prowess. And I think what we're starting to see is a normalizing of where corporations fit and where independent hospitals fit. But I do think that we're in a golden age, a renaissance of the independent practice, with all sorts of new practice models, new ways of delivering things, new niche models. And so I'm very excited about what the future looks like for independent hospitals. And I do think that there will always be a portion of hospitals owned by national corporations, national aggregators. And I don't think that there are a problem with that. I think we can learn from them how to manage our practices better. And we can learn from them not to make some of the mistakes that they've identified that have made it harder for them to manage a veterinary hospital.
Right. I do find where a lot of the practices that have been absorbed by investment groups or corporations, there is a dramatic cultural shift that happens in them, to where they're operating in one way, and then within a couple of years, things are not the way they used to be any longer. And I'm wondering, would you say that would be a big thing that people are starting to learn these days, or is it? What would be your thoughts around that?
Well, it's a challenge whether you sell to an independent party or to a corporation. As a small business owner, most often the business culture is built around you and the
Mhm.
team that you have surrounded yourself with. In a perfect world, I would transfer all of that intellectual properties, those relationships, to my successor. But my successor isn't me. And they may have a different leadership style. They may work with people differently. They may be better. And so anytime you transition leadership within a business, unless you have been able to specifically cherry pick somebody like you to take over, there's going to be happy people that you're leaving, unhappy people that you're leaving, and it's going to be a challenge to take that culture, smooth it out, sand it out, make it look good for the next leader. And
Mhm.
leadership is not easy. In fact, I would suggest leadership is one of the weaknesses in the veterinary field. And so we have a lot of practices that have wannabe leaders with a team that's looking for leadership. And then, of course, when you change that leader in midstream, you'll start to see turnover because people get bonded to the doctor, clients get bonded to the doctor. So there's going to be a period of storming, norming, reforming, and then ultimately performing. But that storming part is what I think many of the aggregators have seen when the selling doctor who has 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, 40 years, maybe even 50 years of history, and they leave. And with them goes the identity, the culture, the vision, sometimes the values, and sometimes the mission.
Leadership is something that I will say is when people are looking for it, it's something that a lot of people they might get elevated into a spot where I've seen this before to where they were doing some sort of skill. Maybe they were a tech or they're in a spot to where now all of a sudden they're elevated to like a practice manager. Or I've even seen, a person who practices medicine now wants to start their own practice. And then now they are the owner and also the veterinarian and they're trying to run a business. And this really makes me think a lot about, you co-authored a book called E-Myth Veterinarian, which I love every time when I read it. I read E-Myth, the original one, and then the veterinarian one's great. And there's something in there you discussed about systems and things. So like, what's a system you think every practice should have that they don't often have inside them?
Well, I think there are hundreds of processes that are part of the systems that are making the practice operationally efficient.
Right.
Because what systems are there to help codify a way of doing things. They're not prescriptive, they're not going to be restrictive in what you can do, but they are there to find best practices. And so, what I suggest is one of the problems in veterinary medicine is that we are not consistent in the way we do things because we don't always document how we do things. And since we have, unfortunately, a relatively high turnover, I think one of the biggest problems in practice is where there's high turnover is that there is inconsistency in how things are being done because they haven't been documented. So
Mm-hmm.
systems are basically a way of getting to an outcome, and the process are the step-by-step ways of defining them. A process may be how to answer the phone. A process may be how to clean a cage. It may be may how to greet a client. But we need a client service system that focuses on the client relationship. We need an exam room system that focuses on that client experience. We need a treatment room experience that focuses on the things that go on, such as dentistry and lab work and radiology and imaging. And we need management systems that help us ensure we hire correctly, do payroll correctly, et cetera. And then each of those can be broken down into step-by-step ways of doing things that, again, are guidelines to ensure that we do it the same way each time, every time, all the time. And people, consumers, like consistency, which is why they go to the same grocery store, the same coffee shop, etc. Pet owners would like that as well, because then they know what to expect when they walk through the door or when the phone is answered from that standpoint. So you have leadership that has to have a vision that defines what the practice is going to look like. You need managers to make sure that that work is getting done. You need systems that define how that work is done each time, every time, all the time. And then one of the other weaknesses that is talked about in the E-Myth Veterinarian, but is also a shortfall in many businesses in general, but more specifically veterinary businesses, is training. Because if you don't train, you don't get an outcome. You get the outcome of the person who was said do this, which may or may not be the outcome that you are looking for from a leadership standpoint. So leadership, managementship, systems and processes, training, and then of course, we can get into the numbers that manage and measure your success, but ultimately the premise behind the E-Myth is create the systems so that the business can run without you. Mm-hmm. And so that your team knows what the expectations are, they can be held accountable to those outcomes, and your job is just to make sure that you have the correct systems and the correct people, and you let them do their thing, and then the practice is not dependent upon you, because when it's dependent upon you for each day, every day, you don't own a business, you own a job.
I would say it's incredibly energy sucking and zapping when you're having to almost like recreate things all the time too. Because when you don't have systems and processes in place, it's like I have to rethink about how do I approach that, or what do we say, or how many times we do that. I've found ourselves even in our own business where if you don't have it, it's like, holy, like, let's all get on the same page here. Yeah. And then this is the foundation to it all. And wow, I couldn't even say it better than the way you said. I love it. It's having the system and then all the little processes inside to know how to take about, what do you need to do? And that training part of it, yeah, if we're not taking the time to train people, and then all of a sudden we just dump them in and then expect for them to figure it out, that's probably one of the worst things you could do, because they're going to figure it out on the way that they think they should do it versus how you want them to do it and what's the best way to do it. And then eventually, once they get a little bit more acclimated to what the business, then they can start injecting their own feedback and like how they can see improving those systems and processes along the way, right? Am I saying that right for you?
Absolutely. We set people up to fail. Mm-hmm. We don't give them the tools, we don't give them the training, and we don't give them the oversight to be successful. And if you want people to stay in your business, and we have a high turnover in veterinary practices, as you are aware, you need to set them up to be successful. If somebody is not capable of doing their job in the first 90 days, then you either chose the wrong person, which you should have identified sooner, or you didn't give them the systems and the tools to be successful. If they're not answering the phone correctly, they were never taught how to answer the phone. If they can't help take radiographs of a dog, they weren't trained at how to take radiographs in a dog. From a leadership standpoint, it is the leader's responsibility when somebody fails, because I either failed to train them or they failed to choose the right person.
What does a truly team-driven practice look like in your eyes when it's really focused on the team?
In my opinion, a team-driven practice is really got servant leadership at the top. In other words, the leader's job is to ask questions, use the team to seek solutions, look for collaborative answers where everybody is in agreement, and then get out of the freaking way. If you truly want to build team-based, it's not about micromanaging, and it's not about constantly berating people for failing to do the job. It is helping to set the guidelines, set the vision, set the direction, surround yourself with the best people that you can, give them the tools to be successful and the systems to deliver, and then sit back and be a cheerleader.
Amen.
Team-based healthcare is all about the doctor letting the team work to the top of their job descriptions and the doctor focusing on doing the three things that a doctor has to do: diagnose, prescribe, and do surgery. Those practices where the doctors are very successful. Those practices where the doctors have to do everything because they don't trust anybody, we have a different challenge. So, Tom, why do you think doctors don't trust people on their team?
Well, my first reaction to it is why do they trust them is most doctors like working with animals more than they do people, from my experience.
Yeah.
But I would also say maybe they don't trust the people on their team because they haven't shown that they can trust them. I don't know. I'm really curious what your thoughts are.
Well, they don't trust them because they never train them. You know, if you can train them, you can release the things to be done. I mean, Tom, there are only very specific things that you have to do in your business because of your degree. You don't have to answer the phones. You don't have to. You don't have to go to the bank. Somebody else can do all that for you. But if you want the outcomes you want, you have to train them. And once you train them, if you've done that correctly, you can trust them. And once you trust them, they will perform for you and deliver for you. And you can just constantly let them know how much you appreciate them because they're making your job that much easier. So what we really need to do is do a much better job of training so we can trust people. And then when we trust them, we need to delegate tasks and let them do what they do best, and they'll be just fine. But we don't trust people because we don't train them.
Right. It's funny that you bring up I wouldn't necessarily say funny, but it's intriguing because trust, especially the way we operate in the world today too, it's like once you have someone's trust, then it's, usually it's like getting comfortable with someone or being able to have them do something over and over or giving them things to do. It's so much easier, but that time period of building up to have someone trust, or even just going into it, like I think from a leader in my mind too, is like I just try to trust people out of the gate as much as possible, especially if I'm hiring supposed to be the right people. And if they are the right people, then I should be able to trust them until they destroy that trust. And then now I have to put a little bit more oversight on them. And then I have to then figure out where you'd mentioned earlier, after 90 days, look, if they're not working out, like you should either be able to figure this out sooner or you need to get them out of the door and find another person to take over that spot.
Yeah. Is it the system or is it the person?
That's right.
Most of the time, it's the person. If you've got good systems and the person can't deliver on them, you failed to give them the tools to be successful. People aren't leaving your practices for more money. They're leaving your practices because they're not growing. They're not being given a chance to contribute. They're not being heard. They're not being anything more than focused on accomplishing a task. If you want people to stay, show them respect, give them recognition for the work that they do, and give them growing responsibility so that they feel like they can have a career within your practice and not just a job that's there to get a paycheck.
What's next for you in your mission to support veterinary leaders?
What's next for me? Well, I think continuing, I like to think that this phase of my life is really focused on education and really giving practices tools to deal with things that are challenging for them. And so whether it's speaking to groups about leadership or doing leadership workshops, whether it's helping give them some knowledge about operational efficiencies through systems and processes, whether it's talking about team building, or looking at young doctors and encouraging them to be entrepreneurs so that they can control their own destiny, they can be their own boss. Really, I think my goal right now is to help make the profession. I want to bring fun back to veterinary medicine. We talk so much about all of the stress that's out there at being a veterinarian, being a team member of a veterinary practice. But honestly, sitting right here in my lap is my 38-pound French Bulldog Pit Bull mix named Bruce. Tell me whether your pediatrician can sit on a call like this with his kid in his lap. I got my kid in my lap. And veterinarians go to work every day, and we take care of dogs and cats and pigs and horses and sheep and goat and fish and alpacas and llamas and whatever else we take care of. We have an opportunity to do things that nobody else gets to do except those within our profession. We should have fun doing it. We have stress, no question about it. We have stress. A lot of it we bring on ourselves because of lack of leadership, a lack of vision, and a lack of training. But we should try to bring fun back into veterinary medicine. And I think if we're having fun, the clients see that. And then you try to get those clients that see your vision and direction as well. So I think if I were to shorten what I'm going to do between now and the time that I ever retire, I failed that too. I think I want to bring fun back. I don't know how, but I want to bring fun back.
Do it. I'm excited to see it. And this has been a fantastic conversation. I really do appreciate you taking some time with me again, Peter. And I'll make sure that any of you who are listening would like to get in touch with Peter. I'll put his contact information and ways to get in touch or follow him, connect with them in the show notes of this podcast. And, if you have enjoyed this episode, it has resonated with you, take it, share it with a friend, put it on social, really be able to help spread the word about our show, because it really helps other people find the podcast and be able to enjoy the same great content. This is Tom Seco, wishing you a lifetime of financial success. Don't forget to visit our website and sign up for our newsletter. By subscribing, you'll be the first to know about upcoming race-approved CE webinars, podcast releases, short presentations, and articles that we publish. Make sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on LinkedIn, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.